Many people go into a job interview with that same knot in their stomach as when they go on a date. And when you think about it, that makes sense. Both processes are very similar. When you go dating, you're looking for a life partner. And when you go to a job interview, you're looking for a work partner. And they are both crammed full of the same set of stresses and anxieties. There's performance anxiety. There's worrying about whether or not you will mess this up. And of course, there's the fear of rejection. My guest today is Marylin Schlamkow. Marylin is a recruitment expert. She works for Generation, and she has coached thousands of people through the process of job hunting and interviewing. Marylin's been on the show before. Her first episode, How to Job Hunt Like a Sales Pro, is one of our most listened to episodes. Marylin will break down the process of interviewing into 3 clear stages: what to do before an interview, what to do during an interview, and what to do after an interview. So if you are currently interviewing, or if you're about to go into the process of job hunting and you're worried about how to perform well in interviews, Marylin's advice is golden, and it might just change your approach. So if that's you, this episode is for you. Let's get into it. Marylin, welcome back to the show. You are our first guest that we have asked to come back. And the reason we've asked you to come back is because your first episode, which was called How to Job Hunt Like a Sales Pro, is one of our most watched episodes. And so clearly it resonates with a lot of people. Your advice is really helping people. There's a lot of people out there looking for work, either because they're out of work or they're looking for that next thing. And it clearly resonates with a lot of people. So thank you for that one. And while we were talking, we had this idea that, interviews and the whole interviewing process is generally very stressful. And we sort of likened it almost to going on a date. When you're dating, you are looking for a life partner, but when you're interviewing, you're looking for a work partner. And we started to talk, and you've got some great ideas around that. Before we get into the topic, what are you hoping that people who watch or listen to this take away from today?
Yeah, well, I hope they're a bit more conscious in their interview processes. So I think with the nerves of an interview, you can lose yourself. You can be very much in your head. And I'd like to think from the tips that they hear today, they'll be more conscious in the process and be able to also evaluate the process better on reflection. So when you come out of the interview and you reflect back, you can, through these techniques we're going to share with you today, you can have a real deep level of thought and think, was that a good experience for me? Do I think this is the foundations of a strong, positive, healthy relationship? Or are there potentially some red flags or things, niggles? Do I come away with some niggles in my gut where I'm just contemplating whether this is the right thing for me?
Great. And we're going to talk about the 3 stages, essentially, the before the interview, the during the interview, and then after the interview. But if I might call out, I think that very often when you know you have an interview and you're going into an interview, it feels like a pass fail, almost exam type thing. How similar is that to dating?
Yeah, I think it can be very similar, right? Especially in this world where we're all, swiping and judging each other really, really quickly. I think this pass or fail element exists even more today. We're probably more critical in these times. We're bombarded with lots of information every day, and I think we're more critical of each other and ourselves. And it can feel like a pass or fail, but we also need to flip that rhetoric and say that it's also pass and fail for them as well. We're also judging whether this new organization is going to be the right fit for me. So, yes, I think there's an element that pass or fail there, but it should be shared responsibility. It should be equal from both parties.
Right. And as a candidate, there's all sorts of emotions going on. There's the fear of rejection, which is similar to dating, I suppose. The willingness or the efforts to impress, because you obviously want to put on your best show. Do you think that it's the right thing to go into an interview with those same set of emotions, or how can you keep them under control?
I think we naturally go into the situation with the same types of emotions. And the reason why we do that is because we are presenting ourselves to strangers. So when we're in a dating scenario, and we haven't met that person before, it's a first date. We are in essence showcasing who we are, putting ourselves out for judgment, and trying to form a connection in a fixed, time bound situation. And so interviews are very similar. And that's why we have very similar feelings and experiences. The nerves can be very similar, the feeling of being judged, the wanting to present ourselves. You know, we we say elevator pitches in
Hmm.
interviews. When you meet someone for a date, they'll say like, "Hey, I'm Marilyn. What's your name? Tell me a little bit about yourself." It's a very similar scenario we put ourselves in. So I think those feelings can be very intertwined because the format's very similar.
And when we were talking, you said that really people should go into an interview um, more as a relationship rather than a performance. What does that mean?
Yeah. So you're starting a new relationship, right? And the people you meet in an interview or the people you meet in a date might be people that you meet that one time and you decide to never meet again, or they decide that. Or they might be lifelong partners or very, very long partners. So I've been in my current workplace 7 years. I think about the amount of hours I work for that workplace. Sometimes it feels like I spend more time with my colleagues than I do, at home with my husband. And those relationships are critical, right? We spend a lot of time in it. And I think if you approach an interview scenario as assessing whether this is going to be a lifelong relationship, a positive relationship over time, that's a much better way than going into it thinking this is a performance and we perform and we put on this kind of facade and we don't really show who we really are. So, I guess that's one of my first tips and my first points is try to be as natural as possible because you want to showcase the whole of you, not the performance, not your best qualities. And then, 3 weeks into the job, people are thinking, that's not the person we met
Yeah, yes.
a few weeks ago. How strange. This is at odds of what we had interpreted on the day. So you want to be as authentic. And that's probably a really key word in dating, right? Being your authentic self, bringing yourself to the scenario. And the same with an interview. You want to be as authentic as possible. And likewise, you really hope that they are being as authentic as possible back to you because you are trying to read them as much as they are reading you.
Let's dive into your material now. So you've got three stages. You've got the pre-work, which is the work I do on myself to be ready to go into the interviewing world, much like I would prepare myself to go out dating, I guess. And part of that is getting ready for a specific interview. Then there's a second part, which is now you're in the interview. What are the best tips? How do you build that relationship instead of performing? And thirdly, you've got what happens after the interview. And we're going to touch on rejection and ghosting and all those horrible things that are happening right now. So the first part of the pre-work is is working on myself to understand what my values are, what my principles are, what my non-negotiables are, in order that I can find the right, work partner. I'd love to explore that with you and find out why that's important, and also ask you, if I'm desperate, I just want a job, any job, to what degree are my non-negotiables and my principles really important? And should I just put them aside in the interests of getting a job?
So it's super important in this alignment process to focus on what we want, because creates it helps us to attract better opportunities to ourselves. It helps us to be really clear on what good looks like in our mind. You can't judge something as pass or fail unless you've set the criteria, right? And
Right.
at the top of the call we were saying each party's judging. They're either saying pass or fail, the interviewer or the interviewee. So you need to do that pre-work, because if you haven't set the criteria, how do you know if it's a pass or fail? In a couple of weeks' time, when they send you the job offer, how are you going to know whether you really want to accept unless you think, okay, this aligns to my values, like my beliefs. This job's really interesting. The people feel really dynamic. We've all got sub criteria, but we need to be clear on what that actually is before we go into the process, because otherwise we start a process and it can be very blurry. It
Mm.
can be very unclear to us whether this ticks all our boxes. And yeah, some of those, taking that scenario of negative experiences before, we need to also be aware of what our existing and current beliefs are about old relationships or jobs that we've had, such that we don't bring that baggage into the new relationship with us. So if I've had a horrible boss, and my new belief is like most bosses are awful.
Mm-hmm.
It's
Mm-hmm.
something very sweeping like that. Then when I meet my new boss in an interview, what might I do in terms of behavior and approach? How might I communicate? Will I be as open,
Yeah.
transparent, and trusting as I normally am? Or will I view this person as a potential enemy because I have this negative belief about them, which has nothing to do with that? That has something to do with,
Yeah.
someone that 25 years ago or what have
Yeah.
you. So it's really important to do all that pre-work to kind of be as prepared and clear of baggage as possible going into an interview.
Yeah. So it will change the way that you show up. One thing that I do, and I just love to hear your views on whether it's a good or a bad thing, but um, if I'm interviewing, um, what I like to do is to have a set of principles. How do I operate? What are my principles? What are my core beliefs at work? So, for example, I've mentioned it a few times, but I have a thing called customer, company, team, self. That drives a lot of the decisions that I make. And I find that having those principles in my mind, when you're in an interview and it's stressful and you're thrown a curveball question, instead of panicking and almost making something up on the spot, I just go back to my principles and say, yeah, my principle says customer comes first. In this context, here's how I'll answer the question.
Mm.
I found that useful. Is that a good ploy?
Yeah, I think that's really useful. And the other word for principles is values, right? So
Yeah.
what's important to you, how you like to operate, how you like to be known or recognized or, appreciated. And I think essential pre-work for an interviewee would be identify your values, what's important to you, identify your beliefs. So the beliefs, you want to let go of any negative beliefs that might hold you back before the interview, like literally shake them off, rewrite those beliefs. Most beliefs typically aren't true. So
Yeah.
if you were going to really deconstruct them, you could find the level untruth in them and let them go. And then the values you hold on to for that interview scenario, and you can build them into your answers. And it will make your answers more authentic, more congruent, more passionate as well. I bet when you talk about customer obsession like that, you come across as more smiley,
Hmm.
energetic, more engaged in the answer, because it's fundamentally something really important to you. Um, and yeah, we're best talking about the things we value because it's the things that excite us.
I've also found if when they ask, sometimes somebody will ask you a question almost to deliberately throw you off and sort of double check what you've said. And if it's not coming from a place of value or principle, you may change your answer or sort of react rather than answering. But if you've got these principles and values in your head, you can just listen to the question and say, no, actually, my value is this, and therefore I
Mhm.
will reiterate my answer and give another answer. Um,
And what happens when you change your answer, Jeremy?
what I meant
Happens
was,
to
sorry, I didn't mean change my answer. Actually, I didn't mean that. What I meant was answer the different question, but by coming back to the same points of principle. So actually, I'm
that?
being consistent, even though the question may be different and the content of the answer may be different. I'm
Mhm.
coming back to a place of value. So, it may be, again, if
Yes.
you say customer value, it's everything comes back to customer value first. And
Mhm.
therefore my answers are consistent and I'm showing my true self.
And if you didn't do that, if you did change your answer,
Yeah.
you could potentially come across as ingenuous,
Yeah.
the level of disbelief, like there could be it could create a red flag moment for them.
Yes.
Oh,
Yes.
that
And,
doesn't sound.
also, if you're asked that challenging question, you may feel challenged and then think, oh, actually, maybe my answer was not the right one. That wasn't what they wanted. Let me try something different. And so then you might say, yeah, again, if I use the customer first thing, I might say, actually, no, it's really important that you drive your own career first and don't worry about the customer. And I'm almost now trying to find the answer they want
Mm,
rather than being me and being consistent. So no, 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 no. Customer first is the thing.
yes, yes, yeah. So your values should hold you to your truth, and it should help you keep in line with your answers. Right,
Yeah.
talk in a
Yeah.
way which is in line with your principles and what you believe. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And I guess it's heart, it's truth rather than manufactured. I don't want to call it a lie, but yeah, you're talking from truth. You're talking from a place of
Mhm.
truth and honesty, and this is it. And final part of the pre work. So we talked a lot about getting to know yourself and what it is you're looking for and your values and your principles. But there's also a degree of research. So researching companies. Maybe you've got an interview coming up and you're going to research the person and maybe the specific company. What more should I be doing? And I'm also how do I not come across as a stalker? How do I not sort of turn up and have so much information? It's almost a bit uncomfortable.
Well, again, it's around that scale, right?
Yeah.
The addressing kind of what would too much information be. So, and how granular do you get? But I think the key thing about research is you want to start creating a picture of the organization, of the people before you get there, to think, should I invest my time into this process? And then use the interview to test the beliefs that you have gathered from your research. So I'll break that down a little bit. Uh, if I have been looking at a company's growth and I see that they have grown exponentially and they are on a really, really exciting growth trajectory, I might use that as a little tip, kind of a little bit of research point to show that I have explored their background and I'm invested in them. Secondly, I might use it as a reason why I'm excited to join the company because of that fact. But thirdly, I might test that with them. I've seen from prior data that you have grown X amount in the last 3 years. How's that growth felt for you? Uh, would you say this, you were growing at the limits that you know, as much as you could at that time? Or do you feel there was more that could have been achieved over those years? And when you think about your future growth, um, what needs to happen to be able to get you there? So you're using all this information to create wider conversations. Now, notice I was very conversational when I said it. It
Yeah.
wasn't, it wasn't a closed, do you think your growth has been exciting? Yes, no would be
Yes.
the response,
Yeah.
right? It's more conversational, and you want to get to a level of conversation with your interviewees and interviewers, sorry.
Mhm. How does that feel for the interviewer? I think I know what you're going to say, but I would just love to hear it from you. If I'm the interviewer and you walk in and you have that conversation with me, what happens inside me?
Well, hopefully it's going to be rapport building versus feel more static. And I guess this takes us into the actual interview
Yes.
scenario. So if we pivot now to the interview or the date as we are framing it, you you want to play tennis, right? In this
Okay.
scenario. So I use certain analogies and metaphors when I coach people on interview skills, and tennis is one of them, right? So if you and I were going to go play tennis, I'd hope we'd have a really nice game. And a really nice game to me is a few rallies, right? I wouldn't want to play tennis with you if you were smashing the ball at me constantly, right? After half an hour, that would wear really, really thin.
Yep. Yeah. It
But
wouldn't happen with me. Let me tell you, Marilyn, I'd be lucky to get it across the net, but okay.
But if we come away from that tennis game and we've had some nice rallies, we've had some exciting moments, we've maybe learned how each other play, um, we've uh, we've had some good conversation during that time. That feels good, right? So an interview or a date is a bit like a tennis match. You are playing a game. The game is a communication game, and you start the conversation with a serve. Now, you don't want your serve to be completely aggressive. Now, you do if you want to, be very competitive and win the point. But that's not relationship building. That's overpowering.
Yeah.
So I might do a lovely serve to you. You might throw the ball back to me, and we'll find our pattern of back and forth. And hopefully that tennis game carries on until someone decides to stop the conversation, or the ball is dropped, right?
Yeah.
So when we think about that tennis, it should have a flow, it should have a pattern to it, it should have a back and forth. And that's where we want to get to in interviews. We don't want it to be question answer stop, question answer stop. A lot of interviews are like this, but if you can get a natural back and forth going, it feels pretty good, and you feel like there's a cadence, a tempo to the game.
How do you do that if this is very bad interviewing technique, but I'm going to be deliberately sort of extreme. I'm interviewing you and I've got my 10 questions that I want to ask you. I want to go one, two, three, four. I want to get my answers and then I'm done. Um, if I ask you one or two questions and you begin that of asking me questions back, now I'm out of control. Well, hang on a second. I should be asking you question three, not responding to your question. That's deliberately extreme, I know, but to what degree do you worry about taking control away from the interviewer?
Yeah. Okay. That's a great question. So you've got to think about your player, right? Your interviewer is your player. And if a player doesn't want to play the game that certain way, you've got to choose whether you play it their way and then try and bring in a bit of your game towards the end, whether you persevere, but know that there's a risk that you might lose agreement in,
Yep.
in, in pushing forwards, or you follow their pattern and realize, oh, this isn't quite the game you wanted to sign up for. So yeah, there's a bit of assessment that has to happen in your mind as to, okay, reading the person, reading that player, they're clearly someone who's very structured and doesn't like to deviate from that structure. How far do I push and try to bring a bit of flexibility in before it gets uncomfortable and I lose that rapport? So now's probably a good time to talk about rapport building.
Yep.
Rapport building, like I mentioned, is this sense of commonality. I like you, you like me, we've got a nice relationship going. In dating, you will get that sense of rapport very quickly, right? You walk into a date,
Mm-hmm.
the way the person stands up to greet you or not, right? Or not,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
will either encourage rapport or break rapport or weaken rapport. The way the person shakes your hand, if they give you a really tight squeeze, that can also change the level of rapport, right? Everything we do in this tennis game, we are changing or potentially elevating that level of rapport, that sense of relationship. And so it's really important to be aware of rapport all the way throughout the interview. You've got to like tune into your gut, tune into all your senses and really keep thinking, am I in rapport with this person now? Does it feel like there's this good back and forth? Or do I need to do something to get back in rapport? Because you can be in a very nice rapport building conversation and something happens, e.g., they ask you a hard question, you fluster, the conversation loses its flow. Maybe you forget what you were going to say. Then you
Yeah.
start being overly critical, going, "Oh my gosh, I've completely failed. This is awful. Like I'm never going to get this interview." Da, 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 da. You're in your head, and in your head, you can't be in rapport because you're thinking about you, not them, and it should be about them. So you got to take steps to bring back that level of rapport. And that's normally by you asking questions or finding some common ground, you taking a bit of a steer on the relationship.
Would you now spend a moment on the elevator pitch? Because that's typically
Yeah.
one of the sort of first type of questions that comes up. It's never quite as blunt as tell me a bit about yourself, but there's usually a sort of question a bit like that where you have the floor. You can go, yeah, I wear glasses. Or you can go on for half an hour and talk about your first pet and all the rest of it. How do you prep that? And what's a good length of time? What's the sort of core base things that I should cover in my tell me a bit about yourself?
So you want to really be sensory aware when you're giving your
Okay.
elevator pitch, right? Because that will guide you as to whether you are taking too long or speaking too rapidly, which
Yeah.
tends to be most common because it's one of your first answers. So it's like, hey, la, 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 you kind of start off really, you've just done your breathing and then whew, the
Yeah.
Zoom starts.
Let me tell
And
you
then
everything I can about me. Let me tell you everything about me. I've got so much to tell you.
every single thing. So, so yes, so I would, there's some structure that I normally tell people when I coach people through my role, which is try to demonstrate a little bit about your personality, right? Because people are buying skills from people, right? The interview process is an assessment of you as a person. So you've got to
Yep.
give it some personality. And that's either through the way you communicate or telling people the way you are. A snapshot of your experience. So what is your experience in 1 or 2 lines maximum? Okay. So this isn't your career history step by step by step by step.
And then I
Okay.
went here, and then I did this, and then
Uh-huh.
I moved there, and then I did this. Ugh,
If
yeah.
they want that, they will say, talk me through your career history
Yes.
step by
Yep.
step. If they
Yep.
want that detail. Okay. So a snapshot summary. Personality, experience, skills, a quick synopsis of what your best skills are. So I have really strong leadership skills. I'm particularly skills at creating a vision, and then motivating teams to run projects that help us to achieve our vision, maybe. Okay.
Yep.
So what is your skill set, personality, experience, skills? Why you're there today is always a nice one. So I'm here today because I am moving from X organization and wanting to expand my skills in this new organizational role. And then like finish it with something a bit interesting about you, your uniqueness, right? We're all unique. Everyone's got something individual to themselves. So finding your special sauce, what makes you unique, and just giving a little bit of a hint of that in your elevator pitch will hopefully hook them in and to have a, to ask about it later, or to have a bit of that back and forth, go back. Oh, I didn't realize you won an award for being a female technologist in that organization. That's really impressive. What kind of projects did you display to do that? Or it gives someone a stepping stone to then continue the conversation.
Yeah, I always think of my elevator pitch as almost a skimming stone across the water. Yeah, there's loads of stuff in that
Mm.
water, but I just like let it bounce 3 times, and then they can ask me a bit more about. Well, tell me a bit more about that bounce. What was that all about?
Yeah. Yeah, I wouldn't do more than 5 bounces. If we're talking about
Yeah,
it in bounces,
yeah,
I wouldn't do more than 5, and I would
yeah.
keep them kind of light and airy, if you
Yes, yeah,
know what I
yeah,
mean,
yeah,
versus detailed. At the moment, you wanna, talk at a very global high level, and not drill into the detail yet, because this is the
yeah,
warm up. It's the
yeah,
conversation. You've got
yeah,
enough time to dig into the detail afterwards.
yeah. Yeah, mine tends to be along the lines of I was an engineer, then I became a manager, and now I'm a leader. It's that
Mm.
level of real high level detail. And then if they want to know a bit more about my management, they can ask me about that. And if you're the world champion stone skimmer and you can get 30 bounces, that's not your permission to do 30 bits of your career, right? You've got to keep it brief. And storytelling. We talked about this before when you were with us. Um, but maybe we can just touch on that again because storytelling is really important when you're building up that relationship, whether it's in a date or whether it's in a interview.
Yeah. Yeah. So storytelling is powerful because it's a good way of you being able to describe yourself or give yourself to that other person. You start an interview with a blank canvas, right? And everything we say in this tennis game back and forth between each other is adding a picture to that canvas. So you will have a picture of me in the middle. You'll now have a few people from different countries around me, right? And then you'll have communication skills around another area. And you might have, I talked about hiring and partnerships. So you might have a few symbols that describe that. But we are building through our conversation, we are building a picture of each other. And I flip it to we are building a picture of each other versus I'm helping you create a painting or a picture, because again, you've got to get this interview to be a two-way street, right? Whilst you are creating that picture, and your picture might be more elaborate and more in depth than theirs, everything they say to you also creates a picture of them in your representation, right? So if we go back to that person who's asking very, very structured questions and doesn't like to deviate
Hmm.
from their question list, well, you're going to paint a picture of that. You're going to say either this is a very structured environment or they are very structured, and that will create a picture. And then the way they ask you about a challenge or a difficulty, are they asking about it in a very pushy, kind of test you way? Are they asking you in a very supportive,
Hmm.
collaborative, soft way? Either way, there's no good or bad. It just creates a picture and a representation of them.
And of course, as you're painting that picture, I love that analogy you've got with you in the middle and then these sort of blocks around you. As you paint it, you're not necessarily going into a huge amount of detail, but you are inviting me to ask for the detail. So if I'm interested in hiring, for example, I now know it's there and I can now ask you questions about hiring.
Yes, and we will drill down on different areas, and this is where it's good to think about the way you communicate, the structure at which you communicate. So some people naturally like to talk at a very global, high level, summary level. And some people really like to be very, very detailed. Um, and in your rapport building, right at the top of the call, within, I would say, the first 5 minutes, you want to be assessing, does this person like talking very
Hmm.
global
Hmm.
and structured and high level? Or do they like a lot of detail and structure? Because if they like a lot of detail and structure, and I'm talking at a global level, my answers will come across to them as uh, maybe not prepared,
Yeah.
not comprehensive, non-effective, hasn't ticked
Or
all the
that you don't have the experience skills that they're looking for. And so you
yeah,
actually, you're deliberately cutting yourself out of the job. Yep.
not enough substance, right?
Yep.
They come away thinking not enough substance there. So yes, so thinking about how you naturally talk is important because we each have our natural style. And then thinking about what the audience likes in terms of how they like to communicate, and then finding that midway point is very important.
Now you finished your meal
Mhm.
and you quite like this person that's sitting on the opposite side of the table to you. It's time to ask for a second date. So
Okay.
in an interview, I mean, I can imagine that in a dating situation, that's pretty normal. You'd say, do you want to go out again? Whereas
Yeah.
if you're in an interview, me as the candidate, is it right that I should say, should we do this again?
You so it fundamentally depends on your level of rapport. Sometimes you just know this date, this conversation, this relationship, it's not going
Not for
anywhere.
me. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
You don't want to give them false signs, right, of interest. If you are really interested and you think this is great, tell them. Tell them that you're interested. So I've really enjoyed this interview. I really liked understanding X, Y, Z. Or I really enjoyed it when you shared that scenario
Hmm.
about your team development structure. Or um, I felt we had a really good back and forth conversation around the growth of the company, and there were some really good ideas shared. Uh, you could be bold and say, "What did you think? Like, what did you think? Did you feel that was a good flow there?" Um, but yeah, ask for the second date if you want a second date.
Right.
Ask for the second interview. But in a interview form, I would say, I'm really interested. I really enjoyed meeting you. I appreciate you're going to have other candidates that you see. So this is where it's a bit different to dating, because maybe you'd hope that the person dating
Yeah. Yeah.
isn't going to see six
I
people
know
the
you're
rest.
seeing 100 people. Yeah.
Otherwise, you know, maybe. So it's a little bit different in that scenario. So you might say, I appreciate you've got other people to see throughout the day. And I just want to really reiterate or reconfirm, I'm really excited about this opportunity, right?
Cool.
You don't want to leave them guessing.
Yeah, yeah. So what I'm hearing is you show your interest and your willingness as a. You're not directly saying can I go through with the process? Because that's not really your call to make. But you are saying, I like what I've seen and I'd very much like to, go through. I'm available is almost what you're saying, isn't it? I'm willing and I'm open and I'm available.
Yeah. Yeah. I'd like to follow up. I'd like to see it through further.
Good. Let's move now to the final part, which is
Hmm.
after the interview. So, whether it's a Zoom call and you've dropped off or whether you've walked out of the office or whatever, I guess, and again, I can reflect myself. You have an immediate moment of reflection and think, how was that? Did I do all right? Oh my God, I said that thing. I shouldn't have done that thing. And oh, when he asked that question, I should have said this. And there's that sort of few moments of panic, I think. Is that normal?
Yeah. It's normal because we're people and we're critical and most of us, not everyone, most of us will self-reflect and deconstruct it. And I think it's a really healthy and valuable process. So I would say when you come off that Zoom call or out of that interview room and you're out of the organization site, uh, get a pen and paper and like journal it. And you can structure it in a really good feedback loop, which is quite simple. What did I do well? Because there'll be
Hmm.
moments when you're like, yeah, that was a great answer. Ooh, I felt really good. Yeah. And you want to remember those. You want to remember those moments where you think, gosh, yeah, I described my experience really well. And, it really created a sense of rapport and engagement. So you want to capture those.
Right.
Then the next section, what didn't I do so well? So I forgot my sales KPIs.
Yeah.
Right? If I'm going for a sales job, people are going to ask me about the achievement of my KPIs. If I forgot my KPIs, okay, I got to be better remembering that next time and conveying that. So you write the things that you didn't do well, because there will be some, like no one does 100% perfect interview because you're on the spot,
Yeah.
in you're ad libbing. And then the third section, what will I do next time to improve? So if I'm forgetting my sales performance data, my note to myself is I'm going to put bullet points behind my laptop screen of my sales data. So then I don't have to remember it in my head. And I have the confidence and assurance that it's there. Um, what I might do next time, I will talk less about the challenges I had in a project because actually on reflection, that might have come across as less confident or less
Yeah.
capable. And I will talk more about the wins that I achieved X, Y, Z. So that self reflection is really, really important. You got to do it fresh, like on the day or within the first few hours, because our minds are beautiful, wonderful things and we make things up afterwards. After we've stewed on it for like 2, 3 days, we start to process things. We generalize, we disassociate, and the truth changes over
Yeah.
time. So you want to get that stuff really fresh, get it down on paper, and then you want to let it go. The best thing to do is like learn from it and then park it as much as possible. It won't do anyone any good going over scenarios again and again and
Hmm.
again.
Hmm.
Do your self reflection, then you know what your things to do next time are, and then you let it go.
That sounds very much like you are almost accepting your fate, and particularly, you may have some good points, and so I did really well at that. But you also, as you say, are more than likely going to have some. Oh, yeah, I didn't do that very well. And when I was listening to you, it sounded very much like you're saying, "Yeah, that one's gone. You didn't get it. Be ready for the next one." Is that fair?
I wouldn't say it's that one's gone, you didn't get it, right? It's about saying, I've done as much as I can in that scenario at the time. That time has gone, right? That
Right,
opportunity
right.
has gone. So you can't go back in time. You can't change your answers. There's no point reaching out to people and saying, "Oh, I remembered a really good example that I should have given you on the day."
Yeah.
What you could do is say, "Hey, I think I didn't answer any of my sales data answers very effectively. I've just dug out a slide which shows that I was actually, I don't know, top performer, sales performer 6 months ago. Thank you for interviewing me. And here's a slide just to assure you." You could do
So, so,
something.
so you would, in some cases, you would follow up with the interviewer afterwards. Because I've always been trained almost let it go. Don't contact, don't write, don't anything, because you had your spot, you had your chance, you did as well or as badly as you did. Now it's up to them. Make the break, walk away, don't contact them. But what you're saying is if you spot something, it's okay to write in and say, hey, I didn't cover that very well, but I found this, and now look, here's a bit of stuff. Thank you for interviewing. And then that's almost the point where you've walked away.
Yeah, I think so. I think so because it shows you've self-reflected. They might say, "Oh, what good self-awareness that they realized,
Right,
they
right.
lacked content." Because if they sat there going, "Oh, I really liked that person. Everything else was on point, but that one question, oh, not sure about it," and then you come in and you address that one question perfectly, they might be
Yeah,
like, "Oh, great, everyone has a bad day, everyone forgets their data. Sure, we'll give them a chance." So I think you follow up, but you only follow up once, right? Don't reach out multiple times. You follow up once, you say thank you for the opportunity, you add in any gaps that you may have missed, and then you let it go. And I think the point you made about acceptance is acceptance that there's only so much you can do at that moment in time. You have the choice to follow up if you want to and try and progress things. But then, you've got to realize that there's finite opportunities. And if this one isn't the right one, then you've got to, have a accepting mindset that you've done the best you can with the resources you've got and what you were capable of doing at the time. Yes, it could have been an amazing experience, but you are judging that against your filters unless they have told you, "Hey, that was amazing. I loved it."
yeah, yeah,
You
yeah,
won't know. You are just assuming based on how you've read their behavior, how you've read the room and the flow. And it's all being put through our internal representation, through our filters, our model of the
yeah.
world, how we represent life.
And what about that moment where the meeting invite pops in? Can you get back together for a quick catch up?
Yeah.
And you get on the call and they begin with it. This is not the news that you wanted. We've picked somebody else or whatever. How do you handle that moment of rejection? Because it can be crushing.
Yeah. I think authentically and professionally, right? So I think it's okay to show your disappointment. This isn't how, I wished it would go. I would have hoped we'd work together. And also realize that more opportunities might come. So always leave that door open. Thank you for the feedback. Um, any feedback they give you is a gift, right? Because it could be the other end of the spectrum. They could ghost you and have
Hmm,
nothing.
hmm.
So any feedback is a gift, and you can choose what you do with that feedback. You don't have to be, if they say to you, "We feel you're a little bit underskilled, a bit too green for this job." Okay, thank you for your feedback.
Is it okay
That
to argue with them and that moment say, no, you've got this completely wrong. I'm really skilled. Let me prove it to you.
I mean, I wouldn't, because how much are you going to change? They've made
Yeah.
their decision. They are communicating this to you. There is nothing that is going to change the
Yeah.
process. It's very hard to move someone back into that, oh, we'll hire you mindset.
Yeah.
So I would just thank them really politely. If you mean it, wish them well with the company, the
Hmm.
project, the opportunity, only if you mean it. And I say that because remember, people are great at reading others. So if you're saying it through gritted teeth, you're better off
Hmm.
just not saying anything. You're better off
Yeah.
just keeping quiet and, maintaining that professionalism.
Yeah.
So be authentic, thank them for it. I would ask clarifying questions. So if they said, um, we think you're completely inexperienced for this role, we need someone with a lot more X experience. You could ask some clarifying questions. What gave you the impression that I was inexperienced? Would it have helped if I talked about XYZ? If would it have helped if I'd told you about this project that I delivered around this? And hopefully they'd give you good feedback. Probably not. We
Hmm.
are looking for someone who's been in C-suite before. Oh, okay, that's not me. Or they might say, yeah, that would have been a great example to use that
Hmm.
interview. Next time, use it. And you're like, oh, okay, good.
But you're only doing that, aren't you, to prepare yourself for the next interview? You're not trying to get your foot back in the door.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. You're
Yeah.
using
Because
it for intel for your next opportunity.
right. And having been the person doing the interviewing, and you phone someone to say, look, sorry, it didn't work out. When somebody accepts it with grace and just says, thank you, appreciate whatever, it actually sticks in your brain and you remember that person. Whereas when they kind of get grumpy or fight or try and convince you, you're like, oh, do you have to? And you
Mm,
walk away with a bad impression of that person.
mm, exactly. And the world is really actually a small
Yeah, it
place.
is.
They really, you never know when this, especially if you're, in job specialisms, you never know
Yeah.
when this person pops up. Or maybe you accept it with such grace that they say, oh, you know what? Maybe I'll tell so and so in the company who's hiring a very similar role, and maybe you
Yes.
could interview
Yeah.
for another opportunity.
Yeah.
Or you know what? When we hire for the next level of opportunity, which isn't the big leadership position that you went for, but is maybe a slight step, slightly lower,
Yep.
but we think you'd be amazing for. Would you mind coming back to us and interviewing then?
Yep.
So the world is always full of opportunities if we allow it to be. If you're
Yeah.
grumpy, if you're negative, you're closing off the opportunities.
Yeah. Yeah. You won't call that person back.
Mm-mm.
Marilyn, thank you so much. We've been through your three phases.
Mm.
Before we let you go, if there's one thing you would like people to remember about this whole process, about how interviewing is very similar to dating in approach and all of the different phases, if there's one thing you would like people to bear in mind next time they're in an interview process, what would it be?
Think of your interviews as the start of a relationship and really lay the foundations of a good relationship. So, for a good relationship, you'd want honesty, trust, strong communication, rapport, um, mutual fairness, integrity, all these lovely kind of values, and operate in a way that encourages those values to shine through. So yeah, think about it as the start of a relationship that will hopefully, progress into a lifelong thing, or at least a long term thing.
Hmm. And actually, if you have been disingenuous in that process and then you do end up working there, you'll be exposed. Just like
Um,
if someone's in a dating situation and they end up not being that person, like it's going to be over, isn't it?
yeah, yeah, exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. So be
So
your
thank you.
authentic self.
Yeah. So thank you so much indeed again, Marilyn. It's been great to have you back. As I say, your first episode is one of our most watched shows. Interviewing is really, really hard. And particularly if you don't do it very much, you go into it very unprepared. You maybe listen to some sort of TikTok type advice and go and do some crazy things. But your advice is genuinely sound and genuinely good. I love the way you've broken it down into three phases. And, when you mentioned that interviewing was very much like dating when we were speaking before, it just popped. It was like, yep, of course it is. It's very, very similar. It's, you're hoping for a good outcome, and the way that you prepare yourself, the way that you behave, the way you hold on to your values and your principles, they hold true. And of course, you're not going to win every one, right? You're going to be rejected and you're going to be ghosted. It's going to happen. So walking through that process and really understanding it and mentally preparing yourself, I think is really, really useful for anybody who's going into interviews. So thank you so much indeed for the time again that you have spent with us.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
And if you want to read Marylyn's download, she has left a second one for us. It goes through the 3 stages, and it's got a lot more detail about what you should do and how you should approach it. You can download it from buildyouredge.org/downloads. And we've got Marylyn's contact details. So if you wanted to reach out to her, you could as well. Again, thank you very much indeed, Marylin. Thank you everybody for watching and listening. And we'll see you next time on Build Your Edge.